Thank you, President Hardy, and good morning to everyone. I would like to just introduce our moderator, which is Dee Dawkins-Haigler. And Ms. Haigler, during her tenure in the Georgia General Assembly, she served as chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus and chair of the Georgia Women's Legislative Caucus. She is a sought after media personality and is a regular commentator on Fox News, ABC, CBS, NBC, and RT America. She's a member of the Delta Theta Sorority Incorporated. Thank you. And I will hand you all over to our moderator, Dee Dawkins-Haigler.
Thank you and good morning. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us on this bright and beautiful Saturday morning. I first want to thank Nadine Ali for that introduction. And then I want to thank President Teresa Hardy and the entire Dekalb section, branch of the NAACP for hosting this candidate forum. When you're in so many organizations, you may say branch, section, chapter, but anyway, the section of the NAACP. It's just exciting to be here with y'all this morning. And DeKalb County is grateful to have you all in leadership leading the way on many charges. And so to all of you candidates, this is so good to see you all this morning. Thank you, first of all, for standing up and putting your names in, offering yourself for service in the Georgia General Assembly in the House of Representatives. We are excited and ecstatic that you have offered yourself up to serve. And so they have given me some instructions and we're going to give them to you now. I'm going to read them to you. Again, I'm Dee Dawkins-Haigler and I live actually in DeKalb County. So these are the rules for this morning, as I always try to follow instructions. We will begin with each candidate having a 2-minute introductory opening statement. And that statement will be timed. Everything will be timed. If you see up in the top left corner, Miss Nadine Ali, she has the time. She's the timekeeper. And so you will see at 30 seconds out, you have 30 seconds remaining, that your time is winding down. When your time winds down, I will have to let you know that your time is up. So please do not presume that I'm trying to be rude. I'm not. I'm just trying to abide by the rules set by the NAACP. Also, we're going to have 40 minutes for questions. And then we're going to give everyone 10 minutes. That means 1 minute each to do closing remarks. So during the questions, you will either have 1 minute or 2 minutes, depending on how I try to navigate through the questions that were preset and sent to me by the NAACP to answer your questions. Now, depending on how the spirit moves me, I may ask a question or two myself once I see how this conversation is going in light of many things that are happening in and around Georgia right now. So we will begin. I'm going to pull this out with House. Nadine, do you? Okay. So this was, I need to know. So I'm going to just do this. This will help me because I need to know who's on. I see for House District 83, Audrey Maloof. I see her. I do not see Representative Becky. I see Representative Becky Evans. I see her. Harmel Coldi. I see her. Representative Renitta Shannon. And Mike Walensky is not here. So those are the only ones that are speaking this morning, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So we will go ahead and begin. If each one of you, beginning with House District 83, and how we're going to do this now, I'm going to randomly decide from time to time who and which order we will answer questions. But I will give this morning, the first person to open each statement will be the person that's currently serving in that office. So for House District 93, Becky Evans, if you would begin giving your 2-minute introductory statement.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be with you this morning. Thank you so much to the NAACP members and to all those watching. We could all be doing other things, but we're all here on this beautiful morning because we care about DeKalb and we want to make it an even better place to live, work, and raise our families. So I'm Representative Becky Evans, and I'm incredibly proud to represent portions of the beautiful neighborhoods of Ellenwood, Panthersville, Candler, McAfee, Eastlake, Oakhurst, Decatur, Druid Hills, Woodland Hills, and the Vista Hills. I'm running to represent portions of these neighborhoods at the Georgia House in the June 9th Democratic primary. I'm a wife, mother, nonprofit co-founder, 28-year DeKalb County homeowner, 18-year volunteer DeKalb Public Schools, 33-year member of North Decatur Presbyterian Church, former healthcare technology project manager and educator, and I'm a reformer and a fighter. I have a vision for our community where all the neighborhoods are healthy and prosperous and thriving, where everyone feels safe and where all individual rights are respected. And I was sworn in 17 months ago, and I'm incredibly proud of the things we've accomplished together. The $3,000 teacher pay increase, building safer schools with new infrastructure, pushing for clean energy options, promoting awareness of historic and current racial issues, and fighting for a more transparent, accountable state representative office. But the job is not done, and I need your help to protect school funding, expand access to quality health care, improve our transportation options, fight for common sense gun safety laws, and advocate for criminal justice reform that changes lives instead of creates profits. That's why I hope to earn your support, your prayers, and your vote for state representative on Tuesday, June 9th.
Thank you for that. And now we will have a introductory statement from Audrey Maloof. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Audrey Maloof, and I am running to represent Georgia's 83rd District. I want to start by giving you some insight into my background that has built me into who I am today. I come from a family of Lebanese immigrants that dedicated themselves to family and helping their neighbors. I was raised by a public educator and a female business owner who taught me that my only job in the world is to leave it better than I found it. I am here to do just that. I have a breadth of professional experience and have had the privilege to have Congressman John Lewis as a boss and mentor along the way. All of my experience in life and professionally have shaped my perspectives. I have had an idea in my head for a while that I might run for office someday, but I had a laundry list of things to check off before I believed that was possible. In 2019, when House Bill 481 passed, I knew that laws like this would keep passing whether I had checked off that list or not. That is when I decided to run. It has been clear to me for a while now that we need a younger perspective at our Capitol. So many of the laws that are being passed today directly impact the generations to come, yet we do not have an adequate say in how those laws are being written. I want to bring a voice for my generation, as well as the generations of those who have educated me, led me, and encouraged me to run. We all deserve a voice. I am native to DeKalb County. I have been a student of the public schools in this district. I attended a public university in Georgia and relied on the Hope Scholarship to graduate debt-free. I grew up in the era of school shootings. I have been a student on a public university in campus in Georgia since Campus Carry was passed. I cannot afford to live in the city that I grew up in. My body has now been regulated by our state. Because of this, I am prepared to represent this district with the passion and fearlessness it deserves.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Now we will hear from Representative Renitta Shannon. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here, and early happy Mother's Day to everybody on the call. I'm State Representative Renitta Shannon. I represent House District 84, which is both North and South DeKalb. It is primarily Candler Road, extending from City of Decatur all the way down to Ellenwood and Lithonia. This is my 4th year being elected, and I want to give you a little bit about my background so you understand how I view policy and the policies that I move forward. Before running for office, I came out of the business world, and so my background, my professional background is in business development. I am currently a small business owner. I have a consulting firm that I operate, and during the time before I was elected, I was a community organizer working primarily on economic justice issues, reproductive justice issues, racial justice issues, and just a host of social justice issues that affect Black and Brown communities specifically. It was my time as a community organizer, and I still consider myself to be an organizer as well as an elected official, that propelled me to run for office. And so what I have brought to the office is a viewpoint of understanding that we cannot just move forward with policies that are okay for the majority. We need to be focused on policies that build in and pick up for communities who have had systemic oppression visited on them for centuries. And I'm specifically talking about Black and Brown communities. And so it is with that perspective and insight that I propose policies and that I look at policies as they come across the desk. I firmly believe that if we lift up the communities that have been most often marginalized, we all win. And so that's what I brought to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Harmel, Coldi.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Harmel Coldi. I thank you, the NAACP and its executive board, for affording us the opportunity to speak with you today. And I hope everybody is well during this pandemic. And I pray that we can just get to the other side of this safe and healthy. Well, I am a mother. I am a business developer, expert, and entrepreneur, and I am also a corporate executive. I have dedicated the last 20 years that I've lived in DeKalb County to be an advocate for things that would improve or issues, to improve issues in the community that are affecting us in a way that make us seem as though we don't belong in the global system. I have been here for, like I say, for 22 years, and I have a deep connection to this community. I've raised my kids here. They've gone to DeKalb School of the Arts and other DeKalb schools. I've been involved in the system and helping them with issues like the state takeovers and the school takeover. I will be devoted my time, if elected, to serve the community that I live in, and also throughout the state of Georgia. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for that. And we're going to go ahead this morning and allow the candidate for House District 91 to chime in, being that she's the only candidate, and there is she has a conflict at 2 o'clock. So Rhonda Taylor, same format, would you please use 2 minutes to give us an opening introduction?
Yes, hi, good morning, and thank you all for having me and allowing me to speak. Excuse me. My name is Rhonda Taylor, and I am running for the House District 91 seat. I have been busy in the community for years, and down at the Capitol advocating, and I am just excited about the opportunity to serve House District 91, which covers Stonecrest, Lithonia, and coming into Conyers. And I look forward to bringing my platform to the Capitol, which includes gun safety and a working economy for working people, as well as economic development. I have been in Rockdale County for about 10 years now, 11 years, but I'm articulated from DeKalb County, so I'm known in both places. I look forward to serving all those in House District 91 and with the incoming freshmen, as well as the re-elected officials that now serve in the House of Representatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So we want to thank all of you all for your introductory statements, and now we will proceed to our first question. Each question right now, you will have 1 minute to answer the following question. The next question is, if you were, it's 2 parts. So if you are currently elected, you will answer it one way. And if you were to be elected, you'll answer it another way. So for those who are not elected, what legislation would you champion as soon as you are elected to the Georgia General Assembly? For those who are elected, the question is, what legislation have you championed since you've been elected to your current position? And we will begin now with Audrey Maloof.
Thank you so much. When elected, my first priority will be election and voter reform, specifically eliminating the use it or lose it policy. I worked at Fair Fight Action on the voter protection and legal team, and there I heard the stories of so many Georgians who had their access taken from them by this policy. So I want to eliminate this policy. I believe that it is someone's right to not vote as much as it is their right to vote. Obviously, I encourage everyone to participate in the electoral process, but sitting out one election should not risk your access to the ballot box in elections to come.
Thank you. Representative Becky Evans.
Yes, thank you. So my number one priority, based upon my background of being an 18-year volunteer with DeKalb Public Schools, is to protect public funding for public schools. I believe public schools are the cornerstone of our democracy, and I believe that we need to address the funding for public schools, and we need to protect. I mean, we need to add in poverty as a factor in the funding formula, and so I've advocated for that. And I sponsored legislation this year for Plant Vogel, where we would delay where schools wouldn't have to pay the tariffs for Plant Vogel 3 and 4 up front, but they could pay them on the back end just like we do for all other power plants, and because the schools need that funding now for their teachers. And for DeKalb County, that would amount to $3.8 million over 5 years. That's real money that we could use for our students.
Thank you. Harmel, Coldi.
Yes. If elected, I would certainly champion any policies that would improve and enhance DeKalb County. But first and foremost, I must say that one of the major issues that we have, especially in the South DeKalb area, is poverty and transiency. A lot of people are moving in and out because they cannot afford to live in a particular place and pay for it. There's a lot of working poor in this particular area. And so affordable housing is a very big issue for us. And also, I would like to support good schools, because schools is the nexus that pretty much connects everything that we have that can enhance life in this community, whether it's public safety, the crime statistics, the housing values, all of them are attached to our schools. So those are some of the policies.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Rhonda Taylor.
I'm muted. Oh, okay. And the first thing that I would tackle when I go to the House of Representatives is the question, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I would love to work on gun safety. I am an advocate for our children learning in a safe environment. And I'm also a single individual, and it terrifies me to think that I could go out of my house and not make it back simply because the wrong person has a gun in their hand. So that's one of the things that I would truly, truly devote a lot of time to working on, learning more about. I'm also interested in the sex trafficking and sex and human trafficking. So that would be another that I would be very, very interested in. And of course, excuse me, like it's already been said, the poverty is a very good issue for me as well.
Thank you for your response. The next question that I've received is—
I'm sorry, I didn't get to answer.
Oh my God. Representative Renitta Shannon, please forgive me.
Time because you forgot me.
Oh my goodness, please, please. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll be quick. So I've had many successes, and I could talk for much longer than a minute, but I will just give you one example about the policy issue that I'm most excited about. Back in 2019, before we had the abortion debate in Georgia, I had sponsored a bill to combat maternal mortality. Georgia is one of those states that is one of the worst in the nation for maternal mortality, which is women dying during childbirth and up to a year after giving birth due to complications from being pregnant. So I had sponsored and let me mention, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die due to maternal mortality, just because of the systemic oppression that has been visited upon our communities. It just affects us differently. So I sponsored House Bill 693, which is a bill that would expand Medicaid for new moms, taking it from 60 days after they give birth up until a year. The bill did not initially receive a hearing, and there was not a lot of support for the bill, even though this was a policy that was nationally recognized as something that absolutely would have an impact on maternal mortality. So I started working with coalition groups all of 2019 to be ready for the 2020 session to come in and really push for this to be done. And I'm happy to report that it was passed in the House for 6 months.
Thank you. Your time is up. Okay, great. So this is what we're going to do. The next question is, do you oppose public funding for reproductive health that has been proposed by Planned Parenthood? And so I'm going to begin with you, Harmel Coldi.
Public funding.
Public funding.
Yeah, I strongly support public funding for any health reason whatsoever. There's so many women and men actually that are dying of issues that could have been easily taken care of if they have access to health care. So therefore, yes, I do support any initiative that would enhance that particular policy.
Let me rephrase it because I don't know if you understood me, and I'm trying to read it as it was given to me. Do you support or oppose public funding of reproductive health? So that was your answer, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
I support public funding for that issue, for that particular issue.
Okay, thank you. Now, State Representative Renitta Shannon, same question.
Thank you. So this is sort of a follow-up to what I was saying before. So I was able to, with pressure, basically work with coalition groups, get the state to to expand Medicaid for up to 6 months for new moms. So that falls right into this category. I absolutely support public funding for reproductive health care because reproductive health care is health care. So.
Okay, thank you. Representative Becky Evans.
Thank you. I absolutely do support public funding for reproductive health, and I applaud Representative Shannon's initiative on this matter, and I've fully supported it in the House and among my colleagues and in the community. Yeah. One thing I don't support is these kind of fake health centers, which are unfortunately also supported by the state, and I would they do not provide medical care, and they're misleading in their advertising, and I would love to defund those. Yeah, so.
Thank you. Audrey Maloof.
I want to second Representative Evans on those health centers that are giving misinformation. Those should not have funding, but yes, I completely support public funding for reproductive health care or for any health care. It is a human right. It is not a privilege. And I don't believe that communities who don't have the same access financially should be unable to access these resources. So I fully support public funding of reproductive health care.
Thank you. Rhonda Taylor.
Yes, like all the other candidates, I absolutely 100% support public funding for reproductive health care and for all health care for women. And
thank you. Next question. In light of COVID-19 and Governor Kemp making the decision to reopen Georgia, what type of legislation or mechanism do you think should be in place? And how do you think the state should proceed as it relates to making sure that Georgians remain safe while reopening the state? We will begin with Audrey Maloof.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I believe that Brian Kemp very irresponsibly reopened our state. I believe that any legislation that comes forward to prevent this issue from occurring again needs to come directly from experts in the field of healthcare, education, and economics. I believe that, people deserve to come first in this situation, not businesses. And I think that any legislation to come forward out of this pandemic needs to be focused on human beings.
Rhonda Taylor.
I 100% concur. I think that it was very irresponsible for Governor Kemp to open up the state again. And I understand that since he's done so, the number of cases reported has jumped 40%. Very irresponsible. So I would love to see some legislation passed in at the Capitol that would limit perhaps even some of the power that he has to put us in harm's way.
Thank you. Harmel, Coldi.
Yes, I concur with my other colleagues as far as opening up the state earlier than needed, because there's a lot of things that were not taken seriously, obviously, even during the closure, because people, not only their lives were in danger, but also their livelihood. There was no policies putting in place to withhold rent and mortgages for people that had lost their job or put on furlough. There was no advocacy done to even from the legislature to even support these kind of initiatives to pretty much enhance people's lives while they were at home, including healthcare. So yes, I think that was very irresponsible from the governor to open the state as early as it was open.
Thank you. Representative Becky Evans.
Georgia did reopen too soon. We need to listen to our doctors. And unfortunately, we did move forward. So as far as legislation, I absolutely advocate for legislation that protects our workers and to have labor laws where if they do feel unsafe returning to work, that they have an avenue to get protections. And so currently with the law, if you have had COVID-19 or someone in your family has had it, you have 2 weeks of paid leave. And so we absolutely need to have paid leave, paid sick leave, and for taking care of family members. So that's a key issue, legislative issue I would push for. And also we need to continue to stay the evictions. And I would also be very interested in legislation to provide some type of funding where people could apply for help with rent during this time also.
Thank you. Your time is up. Representative Shannon.
Thank you. Yes, I agree that the governor reopened the state far too early. He has not even done some of the things that folks like myself have reached out to him publicly to do. For example, several weeks ago when this all started, myself and a bunch of other Black legislators got together to write the governor to ask that there be specific data on how this is affecting Black and Brown communities. We know that this is having a disproportionate impact across the nation, so you can expect that it's going to have that disproportionate impact for Black and Brown communities in Georgia. Secondly, I've been working with UFCW for the governor to consider retail workers as frontline workers. He's reopening and not even mandating that companies provide protective gear to these folks who have worked throughout this pandemic. 1 in 5 Black people are able to work from home. So that is one of the reasons that we see that this is disproportionately affecting Black communities, and he's done nothing to protect, to make sure that Black and Brown communities are, to cut down on the impact in Georgia. So he needs to take those steps before he could even consider reopening, and it's too early. And we have been publicly pressuring him to do these things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The next question is on criminal justice reform. The question comes in is, would you support legislation that would incarcerate children who are 12 years of age? Let me see where they're trying to go. Yes, would you vote for laws that would allow children to go to prison as early as the age of 12? And we'll just begin. Harmel, Coldi.
No, there's no, it doesn't even make any legal sense to even try to incarcerate children. My background as far as justice reform and juvenile justice reform has been long-standing. I have advocated for those same issues as far as having liaison in the schools to make sure that our children that are somewhat borderline in the communities that are in certain areas should be taken care of as far as a wraparound program to make sure that they are safe, not only in their neighborhood, but also to make sure that they don't get involved in situation that would pretty much make them vulnerable to go to jail. There are laws in the book now that children will go to juvenile system and whatnot, but I don't think this is the right way.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda Taylor.
Absolutely. No, I would not support any I would not support any legislation that would incarcerate children as young as 12. I think that's horrible and horrific to even mix the mentality of an adult in the same prison with a child. I think we do need wraparound services that reach out into the community to attempt to avoid and prevent the school to prison pipeline. But I would definitely not support any legislation that would incarcerate a 12-year-old or younger.
Representative Renitta Shannon.
I absolutely do not support any legislation that would send a 12-year-old to jail. And I think it's larger than just bills that set an age limit on who can go to jail. It is the sneaky bills that we see from time to time in the legislature that set up a scenario where it's going to put kids in the school to prison pipeline. For example, SB 15 was a bill that passed in the House and the Senate. I think it was 2018 that this bill passed, and that bill would have codified the school to prison pipeline. I worked with legislators and community groups even after the bill had passed both chambers to get the governor to veto it, and he did. And that would have been a bill that basically would have said, if your child gets in trouble at school, immediately call the police. That is how it's bills like that that are very sneaky, that have the effect of putting 12-year-olds in jail. So I think it's much larger than just, do we want to send 12-year-olds to jail? It is looking at the consequences of these bills, of how it will impact Black and Brown communities, instead of just what you read. You have to know your community to know how these bills will take effect.
Thank you so much. Audrey Maloof.
Thank you. Absolutely not. I would not support any legislation that sends a 12-year-old to prison. I believe that, clearly our criminal justice system needs reform, and the fact that this question is even posed proves that even more.
Representative Becky Evans.
Thank you. So I absolutely would not support legislation that would allow 12-year-olds to be incarcerated. And I agree with Representative Shannon on this issue of what happened with Senate Bill 15, and it's these kind of sneaky type bills that can come to us in the legislature, where basically that law was written up where it was a very broad definition of how a student could come under surveillance of a police system and be turned in. So one thing I do want to say is that we need to allow discretion of judges, and I believe in the Teskey approach. Stephen Teskey is a juvenile justice judge in Clayton County. He's been a leader in providing intervention systems, interventions for students that are getting into trouble in the juvenile justice system. So we need to not have mandatory minimums, and we need to allow judges discretion for our juveniles.
Thank you. Time is up. Okay, so now we're going to have a Dee Dawkins-Haigler question. And given that the state of Georgia revenue decreased by $1 billion last month, what agencies would you cut in order to make sure that the budget would be balanced this year? And we'll begin with Representative Becky Evans.
Goodness. Well, as you just stated, yeah, we need to cut 14. They're telling us we need to cut 14%. First of all, I would say we need to re-examine that statement. We need to look at where our revenues are coming from and see if we can. I would fight to bring in additional revenues. We can raise our cigarette and tobacco, our tobacco tax. That could bring in some extra revenue. So I don't necessarily agree that we need to do 14% across the board. And I'm not Yeah, I'm looking here at our map of the 11 key areas, and I can't think of any area that I would say I would cut above others. So I would basically just, I think that we are going to have to make cuts. I would fight for furloughs
Thank
rather
you.
than layoffs.
Thank you. Time
Okay.
time is
All right.
up.
Okay.
Thank you. Harmel, Coldi.
Well, I think when you're dealing with budget, you just got to look at where there's always room for improvement. I have not worked on a state budget, but I am very familiar where you can somewhat shave certain pieces that perhaps not as necessary as needed. But I do believe that a cigarette tax is also something that can be looked at. Not necessarily at 14, cutting a budget at 14% would be something that's necessary, especially when we are dealing with such a tight budget to begin with. Schools are being affected because they're cutting the budget, but I do believe there's some areas that they can raise taxes that are not important. They can increase taxes rather that are not important to the general public, where they can make up that revenue.
Thank you. Rhonda Taylor.
Yes, hi. I agree. I think that cutting the budget that's already tight is going to be a challenge for all. I've not worked on a state budget either, but I do, if I'm correct, I understand that the governor wanted to shave off in areas in order to support and fund his criminal justice bill. Well, we could use some of those fundings to kind of put back into the kitty for long term, but I've not worked on a state budget before, but I would definitely be interested in looking at where we could cut, if possible, or raise revenues in other forms.
Audrey Maloof.
Thank you. Obviously, in Georgia, we have one of the tightest budgets in the country. I think that specifically shaving public safety and homeland security, specifically around our state troopers. I don't know if you've been down at the Capitol and seen all of the semi-automatic weapons that state troopers carry, but shaving some of those funds down could really make a large impact, and that is where I would start.
Thank you. Representative Renitta Shannon.
Yes, there's a few areas I would cut. Number one, the Department of Corrections. Georgia is still one of those states that is the highest for mass incarceration. We are still spending way too much money on incarcerating folks and not on everything else that we need to spend money on. The other area is we are still funding FAPE clinics, as was mentioned before. I had sponsored House Bill 188, which would remove the millions of dollars that we do give to crisis pregnancy centers. So the funding for that needs to go. In addition, what I've seen in my 4 years at the Capitol is that conservatives have a mentality that they do not want to receive or accept federal funding, because then that allows the federal government to tell the states what to do. I think it's time out for that approach. We need to accept any money that the federal government is willing to give to us. This not wanting to accept federal money has been the reason that we have not expanded Medicaid. And so now we see that we're in a very tight position and folks are still moving forward with that mentality of not wanting to accept federal funding. We need to deal with the federal government to make sure that Georgia does not completely drown during this as a result of this crisis. And that's what we need to push. So I think we need to shift from cuts to accepting the help that's being offered to us over and over again.
Thank you, Representative Shannon. Next question is, do you support or oppose low-income housing tax credits, and why? We will begin with you, Rhonda Taylor.
Do I support low-income housing?
Support or oppose low-income tax credits, and why?
I support it because they need a helping hand. And there are, especially during a time like the crisis that we're living in now, where people, even though they are in low-income housing, they can't afford to even survive in that. So I would definitely support any tax credit that would go to them.
Thank you. Representative Becky Evans.
Yes, I would support low-income housing tax credits, and affordable housing is an important issue for DeKalb, and I've been listening to our residents about this issue, and there's a group called the Coalition for a Diverse DeKalb, and I joined with them and advocating for DeKalb County to use their CBD grants, their community block grants, for a higher percentage to build affordable housing. And I am pleased that DeKalb has changed their percentage of funds to that. So that's one very small step towards affordable housing. And this is also something I was going to hold 2 town halls to listen to residents about this issue before the pandemic. And I regret that didn't happen, but I plan to do it once we can meet again in person. So yes, I absolutely do support the tax credits also for affordable housing.
Thank you. Audrey Maloof.
Yes, absolutely. I support affordable housing. I support tax credits for affordable housing. I obviously Metro Atlanta, we have some of the highest housing costs in the country, and that is obviously not representative of our constituency across Metro Atlanta. So I believe any way to support citizens who need affordable housing, I fully support.
Thank you. Representative Shannon.
Yes, I absolutely support tax credits for affordable housing, but I would say also that we need to clarify what we mean by affordable housing, because I've seen in some areas where affordable housing is looked at as one individual can make $80,000 and have no children. When you look at something like that, that is not a situation where somebody who is a low-wage worker would qualify, or you're giving too much to folks who really don't need it. So I think we need to shore that up. And the other thing is, localities have tried to make a difference in this area, but the state has its foot on the neck of cities and counties. And I say that because the state has a preemption law that says that counties, that localities and cities are not able to do anything like rent control. So that goes right to the heart of affordable housing. And so here you have the state preventing cities and counties from doing what they would like to do on this area. And so that's an issue where the state needs to take its foot off of the neck of the counties.
Thank you. Harmel, Coldi.
Concur with Representative Shannon in that aspect, but also we need to revisit how the community block grants have been disseminated, have been given to third parties to build these homes also, because sometimes in the past we have seen where counties has been giving these funding to large investors and developers, and then what they do is they somewhat say, well, we have 10% of this particular building dedicated for low-income housing, and then the rent is $5,000 a month. And we know that that's not a fair assessment of affordable housing. So what needs to be done is that we need to take a look at how this block grant has been pretty much given to these individuals that are somewhat making or building these homes for individuals.
Thank you so much. Now we will move to the next question, and this is a Dee Dawkins-Haigler question. In light of the situation in Brunswick, Georgia, and the death of Ahmaud Arbery, what legislation or actions would you put in place in your role as state legislator to make sure that this will not happen again? And we will begin with you, Harmel, Coldi.
First and foremost, Georgia is very weak when it comes to hate laws. We don't really have a law that somewhat would make sure something so heinous that occurred as a murder. I call it premeditated murder, because these gentlemen, well, I wouldn't call them gentlemen, these murderers somewhat went after this young man because he was running in a community where he didn't fit in. Obviously, if there was law in place to take care, hate laws in place to take care of these individuals, they would have been in jail, not spending 2 months out there, hang out. If the something like that would have happened to someone else, or obviously to a white individual, it would not happen that way. So therefore, I think we need to just work on make sure that laws are fair for everybody, not just for particular people.
Thank you for that. Audrey Maloof.
Yes, this crime is absolutely tragic. I believe that, first and foremost, we need to work on hate crimes legislation in our state. We are one of the few states in the country that does not have any hate crime legislation passed. It is absolutely heartbreaking, and I believe that, gun reform really is a key point, but also supporting people's right to carry as well. I don't believe that Ahmaud Arbery would have been saved by that, because I don't know anyone that jogs with a firearm on them. But I believe that, we need training components similar to a driver's license test that require education as well as physical components. And to maintain your gun license, you have to fulfill these requirements regularly and update your status. And I believe that we need to know who in our state has firearms, specifically ones that are automatic weapons.
Yes. Thank you for your response. Rhonda Taylor.
And former Representative Hawkins, I can't even talk. Hawkins, you know that we've been working on that with the AME Church for a while. We tried to get something passed in legislature in 2018, I believe, and I think that we need to keep pushing for that legislation for the hate crime bill. We know that I think it's 5 states that do not have one currently. So I definitely support the legislature keep pushing with that and making sure that we identify and establish some laws that does work and balance the rights of those who do have weapons, and that we just keep fighting and pushing for that, because we've got to find a solution to the murdering of our own Black and brown people.
Thank you. Representative Renitta Shannon.
Something happened to her. She's trying to reconnect.
Okay, Representative Becky Evans.
So Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, and with Mother's Day coming up on Sunday and with Ahmaud's birthday on Friday, as a parent, I'm heartbroken for his family, and I can only imagine the horror that they're going through. And I'm grateful that there were finally arrests for his murder. And one thing this has made me think about is how important our local officials are, our DeKalb officials are, and we need to know, who those folks are, and of course how important that the trust is that we have in them. As far as a state law to be changed, I would definitely concur about the hate crimes. The House has passed the hate crimes bill. I stood at the AME Church this year in advocating for the Senate to pass the hate crimes bill. That's a very important step. And I would also want to look at come back to the county level. And I was communicating with Sherry Boston, our DA, and I was asking her about if an ex-cop or law enforcement person killed someone, would their case automatically have gone to the GBI? Yeah, and that isn't what happens in DeKalb. Only if it's a current police officer referred.
Thank you. Is Representative Shannon back with us?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, my computer disconnected. Had a Wi-Fi issue. Yeah, so on this question, I think, so although I would support having a specifically crafted hate crimes law that is not going to target the wrong people, which is what we've seen in other states, I don't think that in this instance, a hate crime bill would have made a difference because these folks stated that they were pursuing him because they thought that he had committed a crime. So what I've done is sometimes it's not about new laws, it's about taking off the books bad laws that are on that just don't work for everybody. And so what I've done is I've asked Legislative Council to file to craft a repeal of the citizens arrest law that is currently on the books. That law allows anybody who thinks that they see a crime being committed to go and arrest folks like they are the police. And so that to me is the issue with this situation. And so I'm happy to report Legislative Council has gotten back with me. I do have the legislation and I will be pushing this forward when we get back in session. So those are the steps that I've taken, which is to repeal the citizens arrest law, because we know that that is something that is going to lead to a situation that we saw with Ahmaud.
Thank you so much for your response. And what I'm going to do now, because I do have 2 more questions of my own, but I want to take a question now from the chat room, and I can't see them, President Hardy. So could you let me know what one of those questions would be?
Okay. I think we were talking about women's health a lot, so they wanted to know about men's health issues. Are you advocating for the men as well? Would you be advocating for the men as well? We can't leave our men out.
Okay, thank you. We will begin with Representative Renitta Shannon.
Absolutely. And moving forward for economic justice, a lot of what I talk about is expanding access to healthcare. It's no secret that we need to expand Medicaid in Georgia, but we also need to make sure that we have healthcare access for everybody, and that does include men. Again, Black people, Black women specifically, but this also largely includes Black men, are disproportionately represented in the number of low-wage workers across this country. And when you have a job that is low wage, you typically do not have health insurance. So we need to make it our business to, both at the federal level and the state level, work on expanding healthcare access for everyone.
Thank you. Harmel, Coldi.
Like when you asked that question earlier about reproductive health care, I answered for both, because healthcare is healthcare for whomever it is that you're advocating it for. It is healthcare. Everybody deserves to have access to affordable healthcare, regardless who they are, whether they make a lot of money or not. They should be able to go to the doctor if they get sick and be able to get some health care for their needs. Yes, regardless if you're a woman, a man, or children, you should be able to have access to affordable health care.
Representative Becky Evans.
Yes, I absolutely want to keep the men in our community healthy as well. And they, yeah, fighting to expand access to quality health care does absolutely include the men of our community. I agree that we need to expand Medicaid in Georgia, except that those federal dollars that have been offered to us, and that can broaden the amount of people who have access to healthcare with good insurance. I also think we need to expand the capabilities of nurse practitioners, and so that they can prescribe medicine, and they can increase their scope of practice, because we need more primary care doctors and nurses throughout the state of Georgia. And so that's something I champion, is expanding scope of work for nurse practitioners.
Thank you. Audrey Maloof.
Yes, as I stated before, I believe that healthcare is a human right and not a privilege. I believe that everyone should have access to healthcare, man or woman or otherwise, regardless of race, income, whatever. I believe that starts with expanding Medicaid in our state and eventually expanding healthcare across our nation. I also would love to institute a portion of the Hope Scholarship as a grant for students in medical school that allows for them to pay off their school debt by working in rural hospitals in Georgia. There are many communities in Georgia that don't have access to healthcare just based on their location and based on the staffing there. So I believe that there are many ways that we can improve healthcare in Georgia.
Rhonda Taylor.
Yes, I concur and ditto everything that's been said, but I absolutely do include the men. Healthcare is a necessity for all. And I think that the more that we make it available, the healthier our state will be. And to increase our education and reaching our male residents out here, because they tend to not seek as much medical help as we can. So being able to get into those communities and providing information and education, as well as providing coverage, I support it.
Thank you. Next question is from one of our viewers. What would you do to reform our regressive state income tax structure and shift more responsibility to higher income individuals and corporations? Okay, we will begin with Audrey Maloof.
First, I would like to say that I would like to stop seeing tax breaks given to corporations across our state and our country. There are many people who deserve not necessarily breaks, but who do not need to be taxed higher than the largest corporations in our country. That to me is astounding and unbelievable that it even occurs. I also believe that, we should be taxed at a rate based on our income, and that lower income people should not be paying the same tax rate as higher income people.
Thank you. Harmel, Coldi.
We all know that Georgia is a poor corporation state, and they're also very friendly to giving tax breaks to corporations and even mortgage companies, how they treat citizens and how they use eviction notices for the citizens. So yes, I would support any legislation that would somewhat not cut it all together, because these corporations are here and they bring jobs. And if they're bringing jobs to our community, yes, I would support some tax break, but also shift that break towards citizens as well, giving them an opportunity also to be able to manage their lives here. Because we're working here with a lot of poor people in our community. I'm talking about a lot of working poor, working 2-3 jobs and not able to take care of their families. Yes, I would support anything that would shift some leverage toward our citizens.
Thank you. Representative Rhonda Taylor.
And I agree. I think that I wouldn't cut or just discontinue the tax breaks, but what I would like to do or to see happen would be that there's a trade-off for those tax cuts, that they are putting themselves back into the community, involving themselves back into the schools, giving something back for some of those tax breaks, and making sure that, as has been said, that it does reach to where it benefits the people, the residents of the state.
Mm-hmm. Representative Renitta Shannon.
Yes, I agree. We really need to take a look at the tax breaks that corporations are getting. As I've long said, workers are the majority in this country, and it's about time that policies start to reflect that. Some of the things that I've supported in my time have been tax breaks for working families. So we reward businesses for bringing jobs, but we do not reward workers for maintaining their families and for maintaining themselves. I do firmly believe that folks pay taxes, and those taxes do need to work for you. And so although the Supreme Court believes that corporations are people, I disagree.
Thank you. Representative Becky Evans.
Thank you. So I do believe that we need to take a good look at our state tax structure. I'm absolutely opposed to, I voted against the bill we had this session that moved us towards more of a flat tax. And the whole Democratic caucus voted against that. I do think we need to look at capping our tax credits, take a good look at that, because we give away a lot of money in tax credits for corporations. And I do support an earned income tax credit, which I think Representative Chan was talking about, the tax break for the working families. And that would be a way where the tax rate stays the same, but those that are working families wouldn't have to pay as high a tax. They would get a credit off of their tax bill.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so we're going to ask another question now. Georgia is one of the states where we have lenient gun laws. What is your position on gun reform? And we will begin with Audrey Maloof.
Yes, I believe that all people should be able to own firearms, and I do support a proper knowledge of the Second Amendment, but I also believe people that should know how to use firearms and should know how to handle them safely and to keep people safe around them. I grew up in the era of mass shootings in schools. I have been a student in a classroom during an active shooter drill. I attended a public university in Georgia after campus carry was passed and implemented. I believe that there are places where firearms are appropriate and not appropriate. And I believe that schools and churches are places where firearms should not be allowed. I believe that we need to institute a licensing process that requires a physical and educational component and test regularly to maintain your gun license. And I also believe that we really need to strengthen background checks within our state.
And I'm going to ask you another question. Piggyback on this. Give her 20 seconds on this, Nadine. Should people be able to own high-powered AR-15 rifles and other military-type weapons?
I think that that is a very good question. I believe that people should be allowed to own them, but there should be no criminal history, and they should be able to be completely trained. I believe that it needs to have a very strict training, and I believe that law enforcement should be allowed to come and check how they are storing their guns properly and using them safely within their homes. And that is what I support.
Okay, so for the next four, that questions are going to be combined. You'll have 1 minute and 20 seconds, and that is your thoughts on gun reform, as well as do you think that people should be able to own powerful AR-15 rifles and military assault weapons? And so we'll now proceed to Representative Renitta Shannon.
Thank you. I definitely believe that people have the right to protect themselves. And if some folks feel that that means including owning a gun, then I do think that they have the right to do that. However, I do not believe that people do have the right to own mass killing weapons, weapons of war, weapons that are these high-powered AR-15 rifles. I don't believe that that should be something that should be legal for you to own. I think at the end of the day, there has to be a balance between protecting public safety as well as protecting yourself. And so I would say, even with a clean background check, I don't think that these high-powered rifles that can kill, hundreds of people in just a couple of minutes should be owned, background or not, because in many of the circumstances where we have seen folks, just decimate communities by killing so many people at once, a lot of times people have not had a background that would have flagged for anybody that this person had an issue, but it was the access to these high-powered weapons of war that they had access to that allowed them to wreak havoc on communities. So I support people being able to defend themselves and to be able to own a gun, but again, we need to have common sense gun reform.
Harmel, thank you for your response. Harmel, Coldi.
I support, I concur with Representative Shannon in that aspect, that people with mental health issues shouldn't even have access to guns to begin with, let alone high-powered weapon. But one of the things that I think that needs to be implemented is to really have a ban on those kind of massive killing machines, because those we can see when we have school shootings, those are the weapons that are used to do these kind of killing. That being said, we believe also, because the gun associations somewhat have been infiltrated throughout the legislature, we know that these kind of weapons are not going to be banned, but there are some push that can be made through the legislature to make sure that there have to be some reason why somebody would want to own a weapon of such. Otherwise, I think that everybody have a right to protect themselves. I own a gun, I have a gun permit, so I do believe that you have a right to protect yourself, but not those kind of weapon of mass destructions.
Thank you. Rhonda Taylor.
Actually, I'm going to on a teleconference in a couple of hours about the gun safety controls. And so I think that we have a lot of loopholes. Mental health issue is one of them. We're also dealing with the background checks and the accessibility to these high-powered weapons. We need a separation between what the utility and artillery rather that is used to protect us as a nation or as a state, compared to that is used for self-defense. And so I do believe in the Second Amendment, but I think that there should be definitely continue background checks, close some loopholes with the accessibility of how these people are able to get in their hands on these high-powered weapons, as well as dealing with the other issues surrounding mental health and youth and games. So it's a lot of different nuggets that's included in that. But I definitely support gun laws, gun safety laws, and a balance of the right to live.
Thank you. Representative Becky Evans.
Yes, thank you. So I do believe that people have a right to own a gun and protect themselves, but we absolutely must fight to pass these common sense gun safety measures, safe gun ownership measures. So closing background loops, mandating training for responsible gun owners, to raise the minimum age from 18 to 21, to end access to high capacity firearms. So I would support Representative Oliver's bill to ban assault weapons. And we need to keep guns out of the hands of domestic abusers and persons with dangerous mental illnesses. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill where right now in Georgia, if you are on a list that you shouldn't be able to buy a gun because of mental health issues, after 5 years, that restriction's automatically lifted. And I was the co-sponsor of a bill where you need to have the case reviewed before you could have your rights of gun ownership. I know it's crazy that even happens, but that's what it's like here in Georgia. So I absolutely, and we absolutely need to pass red flag laws also, where domestic abusers don't have easy access to guns, or they don't have access to guns. So it's a huge issue for us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Your time is up. This will be the last question that we're going to ask because our time is winding down. It's been a joy. So the last question, and this will be before your closing statement, is do you support or oppose imposing time limits on Georgia representatives and senators? And we will begin with Audrey Maloof.
Yeah, on the state level, I think that it's a great idea to enforce term limits. I think that a lot of people really get comfortable in their seats, and that is not something that we want to see done. I also always encourage, people who are running for office to challenge people in elections. I don't think that any election should ever go uncontested. And I think that, it holds our representatives accountable and pushes them to, represent their community well. But yes, I believe that we should impose term limits. I think that there should be a conversation around what that is and what that looks like. I don't have a perfect idea of what kind of term limit I would like to see in Georgia, but I do think that it's important.
Thank you. Rhonda Taylor.
I don't know how I really feel definitively about that question, because it has to be a combination and a balance of the voters and the ones that you represent as an elected official, and holding you accountable. And if you're doing a good job, I just don't know that if we set, let's say, for example, we set a term limit of 2 terms, and that representative is on a roll with getting some things done, and his or her constituents are pleased with them. I'm not sure definitively how I feel about that. Just to be honest, I don't know.
Thank you. Harmel Coldi.
Well, I don't really think being in office should be a career. I think it should be an opportunity to serve for a period of time. And if you go into a community, you serve for 10 years and there's no improvement in the community, where no one can see after you left that particular position. They can't say that, yes, she's been there and this is what she or he has done. I think, yeah, there should be a term limit, because after 10 to 25 years, or even 4 years in office, there should be something about this community that they should say, yes, she was here, this is what she has done, and this is how she had improved this community. Otherwise, I think that you're just giving some people a pass to just sit in office and live life.
Thank you, Representative Becky Evans.
I think that the current system works. I don't see a need for term limits. I could be persuaded otherwise, but right now I feel like the voters have the opportunity to end someone's term in office. I've gotten to know some of our experienced legislators at the Capitol, and their wisdom, you know, has been very helpful to us in dealing with some situations. So I could be persuaded if you did do term limits in the House, I'd want to set it pretty high, like 16 years or something. I wouldn't want it to be just 2 terms or 4 terms, because you need someone that has some experience to on these committees that's, you know, worked on legislation and has relationships in the State House. So I would say I don't see a need for it, but if we did do it, I would want to have it fairly high, like 8 term, limited 8 terms or
Thank you.
yeah, something like that.
Thank you. Representative Renitta Shannon.
Yes, I'm okay with term limits. I think that it can help in situations where you have folks who, and I've even seen this in the time that I've been elected, folks who become so powerful in elected office that it's virtually impossible to beat them, because the folks who you would need support from in order to remove somebody who's doing harm to the entire state also gets their money from that same individual. For example, if they sit on a budget committee. So I do understand the need for term limits, but I would say it has to be something that is done in conjunction with other things. Because, you know, for example, we would need to see that elections would become publicly funded. If you just do term limits standalone and you don't do anything else in conjunction with that, you can actually hurt democracy. And you can see what we've seen in other states, which is where lobbyists know, okay, this person, term limits are 6 years, and they can just keep buying elections because they can get behind the candidate. They know when your time is coming up, and they're able to buy elections. So I support it as long as it's in conjunction with other things that will make sure that we're not hurting democracy by allowing folks to game the clock and buy elections. As long as we're going to do things like make it so elections are publicly funded, make it so that we have some guardrails to strengthen democracy.
Thank you for your answer. Now, we're going to close out, and I want each one of the candidates to give us a 1-minute closing statement on why you feel that you are the best person to represent the particular district that you are currently running for or currently serving in. And we will begin with Audrey Maloof.
Thank you so much for having us, and I want to thank you for hosting this. I decided to run for this seat because I believe that we are not getting enough out of our representation. This seat is not owned by anyone, it is rented, and the people of District 83 deserve to have a choice in who they are renting it to. Our voices have power and influence, and because of that, we must use them to speak up and speak out. I have done this time and time again in my short career in politics. In college, I founded a group to repeal the campus carry bill in Georgia. I have always been a strong advocate from the platform where I stand. And I want the people to know, the people of this district to know that I will never shy away from doing just that. We need to be loud about the things that are important to us. I don't take this role lightly. It is not just a title, it is a duty. I am ready to represent this district with all of the passion and fearlessness it deserves, and it would be the greatest honor of my life to earn your vote on June 9th and to represent this district.
Thank you for your response. Representative Becky Evans.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Representative Becky Evans, and I was elected in 2018. And it's been my honor and privilege to serve. I was elected with a 30-point margin over a 16-year incumbent, and I did that by being active and engaged with all of you in the community, or doing my best to reach as many of you as possible in the community. I very much value the work of the NAACP and the relationships that we have built, and I share the vision of the NAACP, where the vision of promoting a DeKalb where everyone feels safe and where all individual rights are respected. And I ask that you consider my experience and the work that I've done in my 2 years and my 17 months since I've been sworn into office, and that you allow me to return. It's been my honor and privilege to serve, and I humbly ask for your vote for state representative on June 9th. Thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda Taylor.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, NAACP, for allowing me to come on in at this time slot. I'm a worker, as most of you know. And so I just look forward to making some visible progress in District 91. I think that there's so many opportunities and resources that we can use right here in our district to just help us help each other. I do believe in the motto that we are our brothers and our sisters keepers. And I want to do the work. I look so forward to serving in the House of Representatives with all of the other colleagues that are here and that are there. And so I'm just asking for your vote and your support. But I also ask that you hold me accountable and that you help me help make this district the district that it really can be. So I thank you all again for this opportunity, and I ask for your vote on June the 9th.
Thank you. Representative Renitta Shannon.
Well, first, I'd like to say I am continually humbled that House District 84 elected me to serve. I think when you think about representing 55,000 people, which is approximately how much every state representative represents in the Georgia General Assembly, it is such a humbling thing, especially for a person like myself who, comes from a community organizing background. I feel that it is so important that you must have people who actually understand issues so that when they see policy on paper, they can know what could be the unintended consequences of how pieces of policy will affect certain communities. And I do feel that it is important that you have somebody who is going to bring an intersectional lens to looking at policy to make sure that we are not just doing the same old that has been done since the beginning of our government that was founded, that is essentially creating policies that are just good for the majority and for those who've been able to vote the longest. That has been the majority of white people. And so we need folks who are going to say, okay, listen, we have communities who have been systemically oppressed, and we need to craft legislation that is comprehensive and that is going to bring up everybody. So I appreciate your support.
Thank you for your response. Harmel, Coldi.
Yes, ma'am. I thank the NAACP and you, madam, for affording us the opportunity to hear our thoughts. I've been in this community for over 20 years. I've been an advocate and a Dekalb, everything Dekalb person. I've worked in every area in this community to improve lives. Public service is about people's lives and community. And I believe that we need someone that would be in the community, serving the community, that understand the needs of the community and present, not someone that just be there to pick up votes during election time, but someone that is here serving. I've been serving this community as a private citizen, and I'm here if I'm humbly elected to serve this community. I will be there to educate, to meet, and serve this community, improve the lives of this community. Thank you so much for affording me this time.
Thank you. So again, thank you to all of you all for your wonderful responses. Again, I am Dee Dawkins-Haigler, and it has been my pleasure to moderate the candidate forum on this morning. I personally want to just take notice that all of the participants this morning were women, and I just think that is an awesome, wonderful thing.
I noticed that too.
Women. Yes. And so thank you for your willingness to be able to put yourself up for public service, or if you're currently in service, I want to thank you for serving in office, because I personally know that it is a hard and sometimes thankless job, but we do it for the people. And so that being said, I would like to thank the NAACP for allowing me this opportunity. This is the second one I've done. I'll be back at 2:00 p.m. for the second half of State Representatives Forum. Thank you, Representative Nadine Ali. And thank you, President Teresa Hardy. And I'm turning it back over to you all.
I would like to thank everyone definitely for coming out this morning. Morning is always bright, and you all had beautiful, bright faces. Thank you, Representative Becky Evans, Representative Ms. Shannon, Ms. Taylor, Ms. Harmel, Coldi, and definitely Ms. Audrey Maloof for coming out, being a part of this definitely educational forum for our community. Thank you. And of course, our moderator, we love to thank you for being a part and doing a great job, and all of our participants as well. I'll pass it back over to our President Hardy.
All right. Thank you all. Great gratitude this morning for all the participants for coming in and listening. I do want to acknowledge our sponsors for hosting this. As you know, nothing's free. Freedom is, hey, we had to get this stuff paid, okay? So the Georgia Act, Advancing Communities Together, sponsored these virtual forums. And then we also have our co-partners, which is Stone Mountain Delta Sigma Theta, the National Coalition of Negro Women, the National Coalition for 100 Black Women, Alpha Phi Alpha, Omega Psi Phi, and a list of a lot of the DeKalb County churches help to support us in getting the information out and then sharing this information as well. I too thank you all for joining, but if you're not a member of the NAACP, you need to join today, and it is at naacpdekalb.org. A lot of people were posting on Facebook and wanting us to be on Facebook and all this stuff. We want to give this opportunity to our members. We know we bring great value to the community, and we want you to help us. And the way that you help us is becoming a member of the organization, and we can push forward all of these issues and stuff that we heard today. We advocate and work with our representatives to make sure that our community is protected, safe, give us some money, not give us some money, put in laws that really help us, not hurt us. So all of this goes into being a part of the NAACP. And again, thank you, and we'll see you at 2 o'clock.